The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with quiet conversations. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy had gathered for what everyone believed would be a routine military tribunal. Representatives from the Caltharian Empire sat next to delegates from the Zephyrian Collective. Trade ministers from distant worlds filled the observer seats. Even some humans had come to watch. Commander Zekthul walked slowly to the witness stand. His massive form cast shadows across the floor as his four legs carried him forward. The old Caltharian shell bore the marks of countless battles. Deep scars ran across his carapace where enemy weapons had found their mark. His left eye had been replaced with a mechanical implant after the Battle of Rigel Station. The tribunal chair, an elegant Vorthak with silver scales, gestured for silence. Commander Zekthul, you stand before this assembly to provide testimony regarding the Human Coalition War. Your service record shows 15 years of active combat against human forces. Please begin your statement. Zekthul's mandibles clicked together as he looked across the assembled crowd, his good eye fixed on a small group of humans sitting in the back rows. They watched him with calm expressions showing no fear or anger. That alone should have been a warning sign. Honored delegates, Zekthul began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's speakers. I have spent the last 20 years trying to understand what happened during the war. I have studied every battle report, every tactical analysis, every piece of intelligence we gathered about human military capabilities. The audience settled in for what they expected would be familiar testimony. Stories of human recklessness, their strange willingness to die for abstract concepts, their crude but effective weapons. The war had been over for 15 years. The peace treaty had brought stability to the galaxy. Humans had been integrated into galactic society and seemed to have abandoned their warlike ways. Everything we thought we knew about human warfare is wrong, Zekthul said quietly. The hall went silent. They were not just fighting us. They were fighting themselves, and we never understood what that meant. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The tribunal chair raised a hand for silence. Please explain what you mean, Commander. Zekthul's claws scraped against the metal stand as he gripped it tighter. We believed humans were primitive warriors who made up for their technological disadvantages through aggression and numbers. We thought they won battles through sheer determination and willingness to accept casualties that would horrify any civilized species. He paused, his mechanical eye whirring as it focused on different sections of the audience. This understanding shaped our entire war strategy. We planned our defenses around containing human aggression. We developed tactics to exploit their apparent recklessness. We prepared for enemies who would throw themselves at our positions without regard for their own survival. A Zephyrian delegate leaned forward in her seat. Her feathered crest fluttered with interest. Like most of her species, she had studied the war extensively. The human military approach had been analyzed in academies across the galaxy as an example of how inferior technology could sometimes overcome superior firepower through unconventional methods, but we were wrong, Zekthul continued. Completely and dangerously wrong. Humans were not fighting desperately. They were not driven by emotions or primitive instincts. Every battle, every sacrifice, every seemingly reckless charge was part of a plan that we could not see because we could not think the way they think. The tribunal chair's scales shifted color slightly, showing confusion. Commander, your reports from the war consistently described human forces as unpredictable and chaotic. You wrote extensively about their emotional decision-making and their inability to maintain long-term strategic objectives. Zekthul's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter amusement. I wrote what I believed to be true, based on the evidence available to me. But I was observing their actions through the lens of my own psychology, my own understanding of how rational beings should behave in warfare. He gestured toward a holographic display that materialized above the witness stand. Star charts appeared, showing the theater of operations during the war's early years. Red markers indicated human colonies and military installations. Blue markers showed coalition forces. Look at this deployment pattern, Zekthul said. We interpreted this as evidence of human disorganization. Their colonies seemed randomly placed. Their military installations appeared to have no strategic value. Their supply lines were inefficient by any rational standard. The display zoomed in on specific systems where major battles had taken place. We attacked what we believed were strategically important targets. We destroyed human manufacturing centers, captured their supply depots, eliminated what appeared to be critical military infrastructure. Zekthul's voice grew quieter, forcing the audience to strain to hear him, and the humans let us do it. They fought hard enough to make it costly, but not hard enough to prevent our victories. We celebrated these triumphs. We believed we were winning the war. A human in the back rows shifted slightly in his seat. The movement was small, but Zekthul noticed it. He had learned to watch humans very carefully over the years. They rarely showed emotion openly, but their body language could be read if you knew what to look for. The first sign that something was wrong came during the Proxima campaign. Zekthul continued. Human forces had been retreating for months. They appeared demoralized and desperate. Their communications, which we had partially decoded, seemed to confirm that their military leadership was in chaos. The star chart shifted to show the Proxima system, where one of the war's bloodiest battles had taken place. We prepared for a final assault that would break human resistance in that sector. Our intelligence suggested that capturing Proxima would cut off 3 major human colony clusters from their supply networks. Zekthul's good eye focused on the human observers again. But when we attacked, we discovered that everything we thought we knew about human capabilities was wrong. Their defensive positions were not hastily constructed or poorly planned. They were perfect. Their weapons were not crude or inferior. They were exactly what was needed for that specific battle. Their tactics were not desperate or emotional. They were calculated with a precision that suggested planning far beyond what their apparent technological level should have allowed. The hall was completely silent now. Even the usual background hum of translation devices seemed muted. We won the Battle of Proxima, Zekthul said. The humans retreated after inflicting acceptable casualties. By all measures, it was a clear coalition victory, but I began to suspect that we had not won anything at all. We had been allowed to win. The tribunal chair's scales had shifted to a deeper silver, indicating deep concern. Commander, are you suggesting that human forces deliberately lost battles? I am suggesting something far more disturbing, Zekthul replied. I am suggesting that humans never lost a single battle during the entire war. Every defeat, every retreat, every apparent failure was exactly what they intended to happen. The murmur that ran through the audience was louder now, tinged with disbelief and fear. Several delegates began speaking urgently into their communication devices. Zekthul raised his voice slightly to regain attention. We thought we were fighting primitives who compensated for their weaknesses through determination and sacrifice. But we were never fighting primitives. We were being studied by a species that thinks about warfare in ways that no other galactic civilization can comprehend. He looked directly at the humans in the back rows, and they are still studying us. The tribunal called for a brief recess after Zekthul's opening statement. Delegates huddled in small groups, speaking in hushed tones about the implications of what they had heard. The humans in the observer section remained in their seats, quietly talking among themselves with the same calm expressions they had worn throughout the morning. When the session resumed, Zekthul was ready to present specific evidence. The holographic display above his stand showed a detailed tactical map of the Kepler 442 system, where one of the war's most significant battles had taken place. The Battle of Kepler 442b occurred in the 3rd year of the war. Zekthul began. My fleet had been pursuing human forces for 6 months. They appeared to be retreating toward the system, which our intelligence indicated was a major manufacturing center for human military equipment. The star chart zoomed in to show the rocky planet that orbited close to its star. Mining installations dotted the surface, connected by networks of transport tubes. Orbital stations hung in carefully planned positions around the planet. Our scout ships reported that human defenses were minimal, Zekthul continued. A handful of patrol craft, some automated defense platforms, and what appeared to be a hastily organized ground militia. The industrial facilities seemed to be operating normally, showing no signs that the humans expected an attack. A Vorthak military analyst in the audience raised a scaled hand. Commander, your battle reports from that engagement describe a textbook assault on an unprepared target. Human losses were severe, and your forces captured the system with minimal casualties. Zekthul's mandibles clicked together slowly. That is what I reported at the time. That is what I believed had happened. But I have since reviewed every piece of sensor data from that battle, and I now understand that everything we observed was deliberately arranged for our benefit. The tactical display shifted to show the positions of ships at the beginning of the battle. Coalition forces appeared as blue triangles arranged in standard attack formation. Human ships showed as red circles scattered in what seemed like random defensive positions. The human fleet began withdrawing as soon as our forces entered the system, Zekthul said. They offered token resistance, just enough to slow our advance without seriously threatening our ships. Their retreat appeared disorganized, with individual captains making independent decisions about when and where to fall back. He gestured, and the display began playing back the battle in slow motion. Ships moved across the holographic space, leaving trails to show their paths. I interpreted this as evidence of poor human coordination and low morale. In my experience, retreating forces that could not maintain formation were beaten forces. The replay continued, showing coalition ships advancing steadily while human vessels fell back toward the planet. But watch the pattern of their retreat, Zekthul said. At the time it looked random, chaotic. But if you analyze the timing and positioning, you realize that every human ship was exactly where it needed to be to gather specific types of sensor data about our forces. The audience watched as the red circles moved in what now appeared to be a carefully choreographed dance. Each position allowed human sensors to scan different aspects of coalition technology and tactics. The human ship that seemed to panic and broke formation early, Zekthul pointed to one red circle that had separated from the others. Its flight path took it directly through our communication array, allowing it to record our command frequencies and encryption protocols. Another ship had appeared to suffer engine damage and limped away slowly. This vessel's sensors were focused on our shield generators the entire time it was apparently struggling to escape. It gathered complete technical specifications on our defensive systems. A Zephyrian delegate's crest feathers were standing straight up, a sign of alarm in her species. Commander, are you saying that human ships deliberately exposed themselves to gather intelligence? I am saying that human ships were never in any real danger, Zekthul replied. Every weapon that fired at them missed by margins that were too consistent to be coincidental. Every system failure that crippled their ships happened at exactly the right moment to justify their presence in specific locations. The tactical display showed the final phase of the battle, with coalition forces landing on the planet's surface while the remaining human ships fled the system. Our ground assault proceeded exactly as planned. Human defenses crumbled after brief resistance. We captured manufacturing facilities, supply depots, and communication centers. Zekthul paused, his mechanical eye focusing on the human observers. But the facilities we captured were empty, not recently evacuated, empty, as if they had never been used for their apparent purpose. The tribunal chair leaned forward. What do you mean, empty? The manufacturing centers contained no raw materials, no finished products, no signs of recent production, Zekthul explained. The supply depots held supplies, but detailed analysis showed they were exactly the supplies we would expect to find based on our intelligence estimates. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing different. He gestured again, and the display showed detailed images of the captured facilities. Everything looked correct at first glance, but closer examination revealed subtle inconsistencies. The communication centers were the most telling, Zekthul said. They contained communications equipment, personnel records, tactical data. But the equipment was exactly what our intelligence predicted would be there. The records contained information that confirmed our assumptions about human military organization. The tactical data revealed human capabilities that matched our estimates perfectly. A growing murmur of concern rippled through the audience. Several delegates were now speaking urgently into their communication devices. We captured what we expected to capture, Zekthul continued. We learned what we expected to learn. We confirmed what we already believed about human military capabilities, and we never questioned why everything fit our expectations so perfectly. The display shifted to show similar patterns from other battles throughout the war. In engagement after engagement, human forces had retreated in apparently chaotic patterns that actually served to gather specific types of intelligence. Facilities that appeared strategically important turned out to contain exactly what coalition analysts expected to find. The humans were not fighting to win individual battles, Zekthul said. They were fighting to understand us completely. Every engagement was a learning experience. Every retreat was a data-gathering operation. Every facility we captured was a carefully prepared source of information designed to reinforce our misconceptions about their true capabilities. A human in the back rows stood up slowly. He was elderly, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that suggested many years of difficult decisions. "Commander Zekthul," he said in accented but clear galactic standard. "May I ask a question?" The tribunal chair looked uncertain. "This is highly irregular. Observers are not normally permitted to address witnesses directly." The human smiled politely. "Of course, I understand the protocols, but I think my question might be relevant to the commander's testimony." Zekthul studied the human carefully. Something about the man's bearing suggested military background, though he wore civilian clothes. "I will answer your question. During the Battle of Kepler 442b, did you ever wonder why your casualty rates were so consistently low?" The human asked. "Your forces achieved complete tactical success in hundreds of engagements, but your losses were always minimal. Did that seem strange to you?" Zekthul's mandibles went still. In all his years of analyzing the war, he had never considered that question directly. "I attributed our low losses to superior coalition technology and tactics." The human nodded. "Of course, that would be the logical conclusion." He sat back down without saying anything else. Zekthul stared at the spot where the human had been standing. A terrible understanding was beginning to form in his mind. The humans had not just been gathering intelligence about coalition capabilities. They had been carefully managing coalition casualties to ensure that the war could continue for as long as they needed to complete their studies. Every battle had been choreographed, not just to gather information, but to maintain the illusion that the coalition was winning. The next morning brought new horrors to light. Zekthul had spent the night reviewing medical reports that had been classified for over a decade. The documents painted a picture of human biology that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about intelligent life. "Honored delegates," Zekthul began, his voice carrying a weight that had not been there the previous day. "Today I must share information that our medical teams discovered during the war. Information that was classified because our leaders believed it would cause panic among our populations. The holographic display showed anatomical diagrams of various species: Caltharian, Vorthak, Zephyrian, and dozens of other forms of intelligent life. All showed similar patterns in their brain structure and nervous systems. Every known intelligent species evolved from creatures that were hunted by predators," Zekthul explained. "Our ancestors survived by avoiding conflict, by working together, by finding safety in numbers and cooperation. This evolutionary history shaped not just our bodies but our minds." He gestured to highlight specific areas of the brain diagrams. "Our neural patterns are optimized for detecting threats, avoiding danger, and maintaining social harmony. We think in terms of short-term survival and long-term stability. When faced with stress or trauma, our minds seek to return to a state of safety and calm." A new diagram appeared, showing human brain structure. The differences were immediately obvious. Areas that were small in other species were much larger in humans. Connections that existed in other brains were missing in human minds, while humans had neural pathways that did not exist in any other known species. "Humans evolved differently," Zekthul said quietly. "They were not prey animals. They were predators. But not just any predators. They were persistence hunters, creatures that could track prey across vast distances and enormous spans of time. Their minds are not designed to avoid conflict. They are designed to sustain it indefinitely." The tribunal chair's scales had shifted to a deep, dark silver. "Commander, are you suggesting that humans are naturally more aggressive than other species? This contradicts extensive psychological studies conducted since the peace treaty." Zekthul's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of distress in his species. "No, honored chair. I am suggesting something far more disturbing. Humans are not more aggressive than we are. They are more patient." The brain diagram expanded to show detailed neural pathways. "When we captured human prisoners during the war, our medical teams conducted extensive examinations. They discovered that human brains can operate in multiple modes simultaneously. They can experience genuine emotion, while another part of their mind remains completely detached and analytical." Dr. Vexhai, the coalition's chief military psychologist, stood up in the audience. "Commander, I supervised many of those examinations personally. Human prisoners showed normal stress responses to captivity. They exhibited fear, anger, sadness, and hope just like any other intelligent beings." "Yes," Zekthul agreed. "They felt all of those emotions genuinely, but they also maintained a separate mental process that was observing and analyzing their own emotional responses and using that information to better understand their captors. The display showed brain scans taken during prisoner interrogations. Areas associated with emotion were active, but so were regions linked to calculation and long-term planning. The two systems operated independently without interfering with each other. Human prisoners would answer our questions truthfully, Zekthul continued. They would show genuine distress when describing the loss of their comrades. They would display real fear when threatened with torture or death. But the entire time, another part of their mind was studying our interrogation techniques, learning about our psychology, and planning how to use that information. A Zephyrian medical officer raised her hand. Commander, the ability to compartmentalize emotional responses is not unknown among other species. Many of us can maintain professional detachment during difficult situations. Zekthul's good eye fixed on her. Can you maintain professional detachment while simultaneously experiencing genuine emotional trauma? Can you feel real grief for dead friends while using that grief as a tool to manipulate enemies? Can you be terrified for your own life while calmly calculating how your death might serve a strategic purpose? The Zephyrian's crest feathers lowered as she considered the implications. The ability Zekthul described was not just compartmentalization. It was something closer to multiple personalities operating in the same mind without conflict. We intercepted human military communications throughout the war, Zekthul said. Many of these transmissions showed human soldiers joking with each other, sharing personal stories, expressing love for family members back home. At first, we interpreted this as evidence that human morale was good despite their military losses. The display showed translated excerpts from intercepted communications. Conversations between human soldiers were filled with humor, affection, and normal emotional connections. But we also intercepted their tactical communications, Zekthul continued. Often from the same soldiers, sometimes within minutes of their personal conversations. These tactical discussions showed humans calmly planning operations that would result in massive casualties among their own forces. The contrast was stark. In personal communications, human soldiers showed deep concern for each other's welfare. In tactical communications, the same soldiers discussed acceptable loss percentages and calculated the strategic value of their own deaths. The most disturbing discovery came when we analyzed communications from human units that were about to be overrun, Zekthul said. Soldiers who knew they were going to die would spend time joking with their comrades, recording messages for their families, and expressing genuine affection for each other. Then, without any apparent emotional transition, they would discuss how to position their bodies and equipment to provide maximum intelligence value to enemy forces. The silence in the hall was complete. Even the background system seemed to have gone quiet. Humans can love their friends while using their friends' deaths as weapons, Zekthul said. They can grieve for their losses while calculating how to make those losses serve their strategic objectives. They can experience genuine terror while maintaining perfect tactical discipline. He paused, looking around the room at faces that showed growing horror and disbelief. But the most frightening discovery was this, Zekthul continued. This ability to operate on multiple psychological levels simultaneously is not a learned skill or military training. It is basic human biology. Human children show these same patterns. Human civilians demonstrate this same psychological structure. Dr. Vexhai spoke up again, his voice uncertain. Commander, are you saying that all humans possess these capabilities? I am saying that what we observed in human soldiers was not military conditioning, Zekthul replied. It was simply how human minds work. They do not learn to compartmentalize emotions and calculations. They cannot not do it. The holographic display shifted to show psychological profiles of human civilians who had been interviewed during the war. Teachers, farmers, artists, merchants, all showed the same basic neural patterns as military personnel. Humans evolved to hunt prey that was faster, stronger, and more dangerous than they were, Zekthul explained. Their minds developed the ability to maintain emotional connections to their hunting groups while simultaneously calculating how to use those very relationships to achieve their hunting objectives. They needed to care about their companions while being willing to sacrifice them if necessary for the success of the hunt. A new realization was settling over the audience. The humans they had come to know during the post-war period, the humans who seemed to have integrated peacefully into galactic society, possessed minds that operated in ways that other species could barely comprehend. Every human you have ever met, Zekthul said slowly, has been simultaneously experiencing genuine friendship toward you, while calculating how to use that friendship to their advantage. They cannot help it. It is simply how they think. The elderly human in the back row stood up again. This time the tribunal chair did not object. Commander Zekthul, the human said with the same polite smile he had worn the day before, your analysis is quite accurate, but I think you may be overlooking something important. Zekthul waited for him to continue. You assume that our ability to think on multiple levels makes us manipulative or deceptive, the human said. But consider this. We are just as aware of our own psychological processes as we are of yours. We know that we calculate while we feel. We know that we plan while we love. And we do it anyway. He gestured toward his fellow humans in the observer section. We maintain genuine friendships even though we understand exactly how those friendships could be exploited. We feel real grief for our losses even though we can calculate their strategic value. We love our families even though we know that love makes us vulnerable. The human smile never wavered. The question you should be asking, Commander, is not whether we are dangerous because we think the way we do. The question is what we choose to do with minds that could turn any relationship into a weapon. The third day of testimony brought the most damning evidence yet. Zekthul had spent years piecing together information that painted a picture of human strategic thinking that defied all conventional understanding of warfare and diplomacy. Honored delegates, Zekthul began. I must now present evidence that human preparation for galactic conflict began centuries before they made official contact with any alien civilization. The holographic display showed a timeline stretching back nearly 500 years. It began with early human space exploration and extended through their expansion into nearby star systems. When humans first developed interstellar travel, they claimed their primary motivations were scientific discovery and the search for habitable worlds, Zekthul said. Their early missions appeared to be exactly what they claimed: exploration vessels seeking knowledge and new places for human colonization. The timeline showed the progression of human expansion. Small scout ships venturing to nearby systems, followed by larger exploration vessels, then colonization fleets. The pattern seemed normal for a species taking its first steps into the galaxy. But if you analyze the actual destinations chosen by human explorers, a different pattern emerges, Zekthul continued. The display zoomed in on specific star systems, highlighting the characteristics that made them strategically valuable. Humans did not colonize the most habitable worlds, he explained. They did not prioritize systems with the richest resources or the most favorable conditions for agriculture and industry. Instead, they chose locations that would provide maximum military advantage in a future galactic conflict. The pattern was clear once it was pointed out. Human colonies were positioned to control major hyperspace routes. Mining operations were established in systems that could provide raw materials for military production. Research stations were built in locations that offered optimal sensor coverage of neighboring regions. Every human settlement was placed to serve a military purpose, Zekthul said. But the military purpose was hidden beneath layers of apparent civilian activity. The galaxy saw human farmers, miners, researchers, and traders. We did not see that all of these activities were designed to support a war machine that would not be activated for centuries. A Vorthak trade representative stood up. Commander, human colonies have been some of our most peaceful and productive trading partners. Their agricultural output has helped feed dozens of worlds. Their mining operations provide essential materials for civilian industry throughout the galaxy. Yes, Zekthul agreed. They do all of those things, efficiently and profitably. But examine the specific crops they grow, the particular minerals they extract, the types of research they conduct. Every civilian activity serves a dual purpose that would become clear only during wartime. The display showed detailed analyses of human agricultural production. Crops that seemed ordinary actually had properties that made them ideal for sustaining military operations. Plants that appeared to be grown for galactic export could be quickly converted to produce materials needed for military equipment. Human mining operations focus on rare earth elements that are essential for advanced military technology, Zekthul continued. Their research stations study phenomena that have obvious applications for warfare, but all of this military potential remained hidden beneath genuine civilian productivity. The timeline advanced to show the period when humans first made contact with other galactic civilizations. The official records showed cautious, peaceful first encounters. Human diplomats appeared eager to learn about galactic society and to find ways for humanity to integrate peacefully with established civilizations. Human diplomatic behavior during first contact was perfectly calibrated to appear non-threatening, Zekthul said. They presented themselves as a young, inexperienced species, seeking guidance from older, wiser civilizations. They asked questions that seemed to come from curiosity and ignorance. The display showed transcripts of early diplomatic exchanges. Human representatives asked about galactic law, trade regulations, military conventions, and technological standards. Their questions appeared to be those of newcomers trying to understand how to fit into established systems. But analyze the specific information humans sought during these exchanges, Zekthul said. They were not just learning about galactic society. They were mapping our military capabilities, our alliance structures, our economic dependencies, and our psychological weaknesses. Every innocent question had served multiple purposes. Queries about trade routes revealed economic vulnerabilities. Questions about military traditions exposed tactical doctrines. Requests for technological specifications identified potential weaknesses in galactic defense systems. Humans spent decades building relationships with every major galactic power, Zekthul continued. They participated in cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, and economic partnerships. They appeared to be model galactic citizens, eager to contribute to interspecies cooperation. The display showed the extensive network of relationships humans had built throughout the galaxy. Human scientists worked in research facilities on dozens of worlds. Human traders operated in every major economic center. Human diplomats had established embassies and consulates in all significant political capitals. But every human presence in galactic society was also an intelligence-gathering operation, Zekthul said. Human scientists working in alien laboratories gained access to advanced technologies. Human traders mapped supply chains and economic vulnerabilities. Human diplomats studied political structures and alliance relationships. A Caltharian intelligence officer raised a claw. Commander, are you suggesting that every human in galactic society was a spy? Zekthul's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I am suggesting that every human in galactic society was gathering intelligence, whether they consciously understood their role or not. The information they collected was systematically analyzed and integrated into comprehensive strategic assessments of every galactic civilization. The display shifted to show the human technological development during their pre-war period. Their equipment appeared to be several generations behind galactic standards. Human ships were slower than modern vessels. Human weapons seemed crude compared to advanced military systems. Human industrial capacity appeared limited. We interpreted human technological limitations as evidence that they were not a military threat, Zekthul said. Their ships could not match our speed or firepower. Their manufacturing capacity was a fraction of any major galactic power. Their scientific knowledge seemed decades behind current standards. But the technological analysis revealed a different truth. Human equipment was not primitive. It was deliberately designed to appear less threatening than it actually was. Human ships were built to be modular and adaptable, Zekthul explained. They could be quickly reconfigured for different missions, repaired with minimal infrastructure, and modified using materials available in any star system. What appeared to be technological inferiority was actually technological flexibility. The display showed human weapons systems that had seemed crude during the war. Detailed analysis revealed that these weapons were designed for mass production, easy maintenance, and universal compatibility with salvaged materials. Human military equipment was not designed to be the best, Zekthul said. It was designed to be the most sustainable in a long-term conflict. They could manufacture weapons and ships using enemy salvage. They could maintain their fleet using captured materials. They could adapt their technology to counter any galactic military system. The timeline advanced to the period immediately before the war began. Human colonies suddenly became more active. Trade relationships shifted in subtle ways. Scientific collaborations focused on different areas of research. Humans began positioning themselves for war years before the first shot was fired, Zekthul said. But they did it so gradually and carefully that no galactic intelligence service detected the preparation. The elderly human in the observer section stood up once more. Commander Zekthul, may I offer a different perspective on the evidence you have presented? This time the tribunal chair nodded without hesitation. The human's previous interventions had provided crucial insights into the testimony. The pattern you describe is accurate, the human said, but I think you may be misunderstanding our motivations. You assume that we were preparing for aggressive war against galactic civilization. He gestured toward the holographic display. Consider an alternative explanation. We were preparing to defend ourselves against a galaxy that might not accept our presence. Every species we encountered was older, more advanced, and more established than we were. We were newcomers to a galaxy where territory and resources were already claimed. The human's expression remained calm and friendly. You interpret our preparations as evidence of predatory intent. But from our perspective, we were simply ensuring that we could survive if galactic society decided that humans were not welcome. Zekthul studied the human carefully. And when the coalition attacked human space, you were ready for that conflict? Yes, the human replied without hesitation. We were ready, but ready to defend ourselves, not to conquer the galaxy. The distinction seemed important to the human, but Zekthul was not convinced it made a meaningful difference. The final day of testimony had arrived, and the Great Hall of Nexus Prime was packed beyond capacity. Word of Zekthul's revelations had spread throughout the galaxy, and delegates from every major civilization had come to hear his conclusions. The human observers still sat in their designated section, maintaining the same calm demeanor they had shown throughout the proceedings. Zekthul approached the witness stand slowly, carrying a data tablet that contained evidence he had never shared with anyone. The information on that device would either vindicate his theories or destroy his credibility forever. Honored delegates, he began. Everything I have told you over the past 3 days leads to a single, inescapable conclusion. The human coalition war did not end with the peace treaty. It ended when humans achieved their true objective. The holographic display showed the star map as it existed at the time of the peace treaty. Human space was marked in red. Coalition territory in blue with neutral zones shown in green. The boundaries appeared stable, reflecting a reasonable compromise between the warring factions. We believed that the peace treaty represented a military stalemate, Zekthul said. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties. Both sides were exhausted by years of conflict. The terms of the treaty seemed fair to all parties involved. He gestured, and the display zoomed in on specific treaty provisions: prisoner exchanges, territorial agreements, trade resumption, and technological sharing accords. Everything appeared to be standard diplomatic resolution of warfare. But I have spent 15 years analyzing what actually happened during those peace negotiations, Zekthul continued. The humans did not negotiate like a species seeking to end a costly war. They negotiated like a species that had already achieved everything they wanted from the conflict. The tribunal chair leaned forward. Commander, the peace treaty was mediated by neutral parties. The terms were carefully balanced to ensure that neither side gained unfair advantage. Zekthul's mandibles clicked together slowly. The terms were exactly what the humans wanted them to be. Every provision of that treaty served human interests, but in ways so subtle that the negotiators never realized they were being manipulated. The display showed detailed analysis of the prisoner exchange agreements. Coalition forces had returned captured humans in exchange for captured coalition personnel. The numbers seemed roughly equal, suggesting a fair trade. But examine the identities of the prisoners who were exchanged, Zekthul said. The humans we returned were low-ranking soldiers with limited intelligence value. The coalition personnel returned to us included some of our most senior military officers. The pattern became clear as more data appeared. Humans had somehow arranged for their most knowledgeable prisoners to remain in coalition custody, while ensuring that coalition prisoners with the highest intelligence value were returned to human space. The humans wanted our senior officers back in coalition territory, Zekthul explained. because those officers had been thoroughly studied during their captivity. Their psychological profiles, their tactical knowledge, their personal relationships had all been mapped in detail. Returning them to active duty gave humans ongoing insight into coalition military thinking. The territorial agreements showed similar patterns. Humans had agreed to return some occupied systems to coalition control while retaining others. The decisions appeared to be based on strategic value and population considerations. But the humans retained control of systems that gave them optimal intelligence-gathering positions, Zekthul said. They returned territory that appeared valuable, but actually provided no significant advantage. And they positioned themselves to monitor all major coalition military activities. The display shifted to show trade resumption agreements. Human merchants were granted access to coalition markets, while coalition traders received similar rights in human space. The arrangement seemed equitable and beneficial to both sides. Human traders who entered coalition space were not just conducting business, Zekthul said. They were mapping our economic infrastructure, identifying supply vulnerabilities and establishing relationships that could be exploited in future conflicts. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. Zekthul activated his data tablet, and new information appeared on the holographic display. Communication intercepts that had been classified at the highest levels for over a decade. 6 months ago, Coalition intelligence intercepted transmissions from a human deep space monitoring station, Zekthul said. The transmissions were heavily encrypted, but we eventually decoded portions of the content. The intercepted messages appeared on the display. They were routine communications between human military personnel, discussing logistical matters and personnel assignments, but hidden within the routine content were references that chilled Zekthul to his core. The humans are still conducting intelligence operations against every galactic civilization, he said, not just gathering information but actively planning for future conflicts. They have detailed contingency plans for warfare against any potential enemy. The communications referenced strategic assessments of galactic military capabilities, updated regularly based on ongoing intelligence collection. Human agents embedded throughout galactic society continued to gather information about political developments, technological advances, and military preparations. But the most disturbing discovery was this, Zekthul said, highlighting specific portions of the intercepted messages. Humans have developed tactical plans for conflicts involving multiple galactic civilizations simultaneously. They are not just preparing to fight individual enemies. They are preparing to fight the entire galaxy if necessary. A murmur of fear rippled through the audience. The implications were staggering. If humans could plan for galactic-scale warfare, their capabilities far exceeded anything other species had imagined. The peace treaty was not the end of human military planning, Zekthul continued. It was the beginning of a new phase. Humans used the post-war period to integrate themselves deeply into galactic society, gaining access to information and resources that would be invaluable in future conflicts. The display showed the extent of human presence throughout the galaxy. Human scientists in research facilities, human traders in economic centers, human diplomats in political capitals, human colonists on frontier worlds. They were everywhere, and all of them were potential intelligence assets. Every human you have worked with, traded with, or befriended over the past 15 years has been gathering information about your civilization, Zekthul said. Not necessarily as conscious spies, but as sources of intelligence that is systematically collected and analyzed. The elderly human in the observer section stood up for the final time. His expression was still calm, but there was something different in his eyes, a recognition that the time for subtle misdirection had passed. Commander Zekthul, he said, your analysis is remarkably thorough. You have uncovered secrets that we hoped would remain hidden for many more years. The hall went completely silent. The admission sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. But there is one more thing you need to understand, the human continued. Everything you have discovered about human preparation and planning comes with an important caveat. We have been preparing for galactic warfare, yes, but we have also been preparing to prevent it. He gestured toward his fellow humans in the observer section. Every contingency plan for military conflict includes corresponding plans for peaceful resolution. Every intelligence operation designed to map enemy capabilities also identifies opportunities for cooperation and mutual benefit. The human's voice remained steady and reasonable. We understand that our psychology makes us appear threatening to other species. We know that our way of thinking is difficult for others to comprehend, but we also know that our survival depends on finding ways to coexist peacefully with galactic civilization. Zekthul studied the human's face, looking for signs of deception, but the man's expression showed only honest concern. "You have spent years preparing for war," Zekthul said. "How can we trust that you will choose peace?" The human smiled sadly. "Because war would be devastating for humanity as well as for the galaxy. We may be good at warfare, Commander, but we are not immune to its costs. We lose friends, family members, entire worlds just like everyone else." He paused, looking around the hall at faces filled with fear and suspicion. "The question is not whether humans are capable of galactic conquest," he said. "The question is whether the galaxy is willing to work with us to ensure that such conquest never becomes necessary." The human sat down, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Zekthul looked at the assembled delegates, seeing the realization dawning in their eyes. The galaxy had been living in peace with a species capable of destroying them all, but that same species was offering to continue the peace if other civilizations were willing to accept the reality of what humans were. The choice facing the galaxy was simple, but terrifying. They could try to contain or eliminate the human threat, knowing that such an attempt might trigger the very war they sought to prevent. Or they could accept humans as permanent partners in galactic civilization, understanding that this partnership would forever be shaped by the knowledge of human capabilities.